Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our English Learning podcast. I'm Jennifer, and as always, I'm joined by my amazing co-host, Elizabeth. How are you today, Elizabeth?
I'm doing great, thank you. I'm really excited about today's episode because we're tackling one of the biggest and most intriguing questions out there. Does time exist, or what is time? It's a fascinating topic for English learners, not just because it involves philosophical and scientific ideas, but also because it gives us a chance to practice using complex language and abstract concepts.
Yes, it's such a mind-bending question. Time is something we experience every day, but when you start to think about what time actually is, it can get really confusing. We'll be diving into different ways of understanding time today, from scientific explanations to philosophical debates. This will give you lots of new vocabulary and ideas to practice in your English conversations.
And as always, we encourage you to listen carefully, take notes, and try using some of the new phrases and ideas we discuss in your own English practice. Whether it's talking about time travel, the nature of time, or how time affects our lives, today's episode will offer plenty of material to explore.
Absolutely. And before we dive into the mysteries of time, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already. That way, you'll always know when our latest episodes come out, and you can keep improving your English.
And if you're enjoying our podcast, please give us a rating and share it with friends who are also learning English. Your support really helps us keep creating content for you.
So, Elizabeth, let's start with the big question. What is time? It sounds simple, but when you try to define it, things get a little complicated. How would you explain the concept of time?
That's a great place to start, Jennifer. Time is the way we measure and experience the passage of events. In our daily lives, we think of time as a constant flow, seconds, minutes, hours, days. We use clocks and calendars to track time, but time is actually much more complicated than just the ticking of a clock. Scientifically, time is considered a dimension, just like space. It's the fourth dimension, according to Einstein's theory of relativity, which says that time and space are interconnected. So, time isn't just something we experience linearly, it's actually woven into the fabric of the universe itself.
Right. According to Einstein's theory, time can even stretch or shrink depending on how fast you're moving or how close you are to a strong source of gravity. For example, time moves more slowly for someone traveling near the speed of light compared to someone standing still. This is known as time dilation, and it's one of the most mind-blowing ideas in physics.
Exactly. And that's what makes time such a fascinating topic. It's something we think we understand, but when we dive deeper into it, it becomes really complex. In fact, some scientists even question whether time, as we experience it, really exists at all. They argue that time might just be an illusion, a way our brains interpret changes in the universe.
That's such an interesting idea, that time might just be something our brains create to make sense of what's happening around us. If time is an illusion, then how do we explain things like the past, the present, and the future? Are these just human constructs?
Some philosophers believe they are. In philosophy, there's a debate between two main ideas, presentism and eternalism. Presentism is the belief that only the present exists, the past is gone, and the future hasn't happened yet. It's a very intuitive way to think about time because it fits with how we experience it. But eternalism offers a very different perspective. According to eternalism, the past, present, and future all exist simultaneously like different points on a line. It's like looking at a timeline in its entirety. Just because you're at one point, the present, doesn't mean the other points, the past and future, don't exist. In this view, time is more like a block universe where everything is happening at once, but we can only experience one moment at a time.
Wow. That's such a different way of thinking about time. It makes you wonder if the future is already determined, if it exists in the same way that the present and past do. Is free will even real if everything is already set in place?
That's one of the big philosophical questions connected to this debate. If the future already exists, like eternalism suggests, then maybe we're just moving along a path that's already laid out for us. But many people still believe in free will, the idea that we can make choices that shape our future. It's a really complicated question, and there's no easy answer.
Definitely. It's something that makes you rethink how you understand time and your place in it. Speaking of understanding time, let's talk about the scientific side of things. We've touched on Einstein's theory of relativity, but there are other scientific theories that try to explain time too. For example, what about the Big Bang and the idea that time had a beginning?
Yes, that's a great point. According to the Big Bang theory, time as we know it started around 13.8 billion years ago when the universe began. Before the Big Bang, there was no space and no time. It's almost impossible to imagine. This idea is called cosmological time, which refers to time as measured from the birth of the universe. But here's where things get really tricky. Some scientists believe that time might not have a definite beginning or end. Instead, there could be cyclical time where the universe expands and contracts over and over again, creating new universes in a never-ending cycle. In that case, time could be infinite with no true start or finish.
It's incredible to think about time on such a huge scale. It makes our everyday experiences with time, like waiting for the bus or planning our day, seem so small in comparison. But even though we have these big scientific theories, there's still a lot we don't understand about time. For example, we haven't figured out if time travel is really possible.
What do scientists say about that?
Time travel is one of the most fascinating ideas in both science and science fiction. In theory, time travel could be possible under certain conditions. Einstein's theory of relativity suggests that if we could travel close to the speed of light, time would slow down for us compared to people who aren't moving as fast. That means we could, in a sense, travel to the future by moving quickly through space. There's also the idea of wormholes, which are hypothetical tunnels in space-time that could connect different points in time and space. If wormholes exist, and that's still a big if, they might allow us to travel not just to the future but also to the past. However, there are a lot of challenges with that, like avoiding paradoxes, for example the classic grandfather paradox, where you go back in time and accidentally prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother, meaning you wouldn't exist to travel back in time in the first place.
Yes, those paradoxes make time travel seem really complicated. It's so interesting how time travel could work in theory, but in practice, we don't really know if it's possible or how it would work without causing those paradoxes. It's one of those questions that really makes your head spin.
Definitely. And while time travel may be beyond our reach right now, it's still an amazing way to think about how flexible time might be. The fact that time can be stretched, bent, or maybe even reversed under certain conditions shows that our everyday experience of time might just be scratching the surface of what's possible.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, this is a great opportunity to practice talking about abstract and hypothetical concepts in English. You could try explaining your thoughts on whether time travel is possible or how you understand the nature of time. These kinds of deep discussions are great for improving your ability to communicate complex ideas in English.
Yes, and while we're on the topic, let's take a call from one of our listeners who wants to share their thoughts on today's question. What is time? Let's take the call.
Hi there.
You're on the air with Jennifer and Elizabeth. What's your name, and where are you calling from?
Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Elizabeth. My name is David, and I'm calling from Toronto, Canada. I've been listening to your podcast for a while, and I love today's topic. Time is such a mind-blowing concept.
Hi, David. Thanks for calling in. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's question. How do you understand time? Do you think time really exists, or is it just a human construct?
I think time definitely exists, but I also believe it's something we interpret through our own experiences. It's amazing how time can feel so different depending on what you're doing. Like when you're having fun, time flies, but when you're waiting for something, it feels like it drags on forever. So, I think time is both real and something that we experience in a unique way.
That's a great point, David. Our perception of time is something we often don't think about, but it definitely affects how we live. Time can feel different based on emotions, activities, and even cultural factors. What's your take on time travel? Do you think it could ever be possible?
I'm not sure. I'd love to believe that it's possible, but I think there are so many technical and scientific challenges. Even if we could figure out the science, the paradoxes make it seem really complicated. But who knows? Maybe one day, we'll discover something new that makes time travel a reality.
That's true, David. Time travel is one of those ideas that feels like it belongs in science fiction, but it's fun to imagine what it would be like. Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation. Have a great day.
That was such a great call. David's thoughts about how we perceive time really highlight how personal and subjective time can feel, even though it's something we all experience.
Yes, it's a reminder that time isn't just a scientific concept. It's also an emotional and personal experience. Everyone has their own relationship with time, whether they're thinking about the future, reflecting on the past, or trying to live in the present.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, this is a great time to practice talking about your own experiences with time in English. Think about how you feel about time, and try explaining whether you believe time is something real or just something we use to organize our lives.
And before we wrap up, let's review some of the key vocabulary we've used today. We talked about time dilation, the theory of relativity, time travel, paradoxes, and the nature of time. These are all important words when discussing time, science, and philosophy.
Yes, and we also used phrases like the past, present, and future, perception of time, cyclical time, and wormholes, which are useful when talking about the different ways we experience and understand time. Make sure to practice these words in your own conversations or writing to reinforce what you've learned.
Definitely. And remember, even though time can be a difficult concept to understand, it's also one of the most fascinating topics to explore. So keep asking questions, stay curious, and challenge yourself to think about time in new ways.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We've had a great time exploring the question, what is time? And we hope you've learned some new vocabulary and ideas that will help you improve your English.
And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We have plenty more episodes coming up with fun and thought-provoking topics to help you keep learning English.
We'll see you in the next episode. Keep practicing, stay curious, and remember, you're doing great. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.